Game of the Year list for 2019. And because I really don't feel like trying to record this the same amount of times as there has been months in 2020, y'all are getting the condensed version. So here we go. Number 5, Mortal Kombat 11. Now you're going to have to excuse me a little bit here because I don't really remember too much about this game. That's not to say that it's a bad game or anything negative. I just haven't played it since it's originally released and have been playing a lot of games in between, so I'm a little bit fuzzy. With that being said, I believe the plot picks up right after Mortal Kombat X. There is a goddess who highly dislikes the fact and the fashion in which Raiden kills Shinnok, and she seeks to take control of time itself to rewind the clock and stop it from happening. Now, we all know that when a villain does this, not only do they kind of flub up their original goal, but they tend to mess with the very fabric of existence itself and essentially doom the entire world. And I believe that is pretty much in a nutshell what happens here. And the cataclysmic event ends up pairing the modern day versions of everybody's favorite MK roster with their 90s counterparts from the original Mortal Kombat tournament. So you get a lot of nostalgia there, a lot of fan service. The plot and timeline and canon and stuff is left in a very weird place, I guess, a place that I didn't see coming, but it's Mortal Kombat. They're going to be able to roll with it. I thought it was really cool, though. I have not played the Aftermath DLC. Really want to, but don't think I will. So I don't know anything about that, but I did really enjoy my time with the base game and everything that MK11 has to offer, which is why it's number 5 on my list. Number 4 is A Plague Tale: Innocence. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm a history buff in any way, shape, or form, but I will say that I absolutely adore anything to do with history, whether it be an accurate representation or a reimagining or retelling. Anything to do with it, especially in video games, I'm there for. And Plague Tale, of course, uses the Black Plague in the form of a sickness within a small boy, which it turns out isn't really a sickness, it's more of a superpower in which the Inquisition goes against the church's wishes to find, so that they can essentially take control of it, harness it, and more or less become the dominant superpower in the world, overthrow the church, typical bad guy stuff. And it's up to the young boy's older sister to not only find out the truth about his sickness, but also keep them safe, keep him safe, well, keep everybody safe as they're being hunted. And really, I think my biggest takeaway or my biggest impression of the game was left by the forced perception that you have of the world, the point of view that you have during the story. Um, because you are a group of not small children, but a group of kids basically taking on one of the biggest powers in the world at that time, with really nothing but a slingshot and your wits. The ability to use your environment to your advantage to overcome people that have armor, swords, axes, shields, all of that good stuff. And you really have nothing. At any real given time, I can't really say that I felt safe. And it was just kind of flabbergasting to me because it's like a group of 5 or 6 young kids, young adults, maybe even, taking on, the Inquisition, which is just mind-blowing in of itself. And it's just that tension, that dread of what's going to happen if you get caught, what's going to happen if the Inquisition, the Grand Inquisitor, gets a hold of your little brother and kind of uses and abuses him to gain his power, and stuff like that. Just that mindset is just like constant tension, constant worry, and it really makes for a pretty interesting journey through the eyes of children. And it's a pretty interesting journey to take in that sense. So, number 4 is Plague Tale: Innocence. Filling our gap in the middle of the list is Days Gone. Now, I want to be abundantly clear about something. This game is where it is, because it deserves to be. This game impressed me and earned my respect. Really, in my circles of the internet, nobody had anything good to say about this game. And I bought into a lot of that negativity. I was like, oh great, here's another open world zombie apocalypse game with, your generic stereotypical musclehead biker types as your main characters. And I spent a good handful of hours kind of being unsure of the game, unsure how it made me feel, wasn't really jiving with it, kind of wanted to move on to something else, kind of wanted to see if it got better. And you know what? I'm glad I stuck with it, because this game completely turns. I know we hear that a lot with complicated, long games. If you just stick in there for like 10 hours, the game really opens up and it gets better. This game, that is absolutely true. All of a sudden, those stereotypical musclehead bikers aren't just musclehead bikers anymore. They're people with feelings, emotions, dreams, goals, hardships, all of it. And it's not just a zombie apocalypse. This is a world filled with people with, I would say, the same goal. Everybody just wants to survive. They just have different personalities, different ways to get there. Not all of them good. Some of them are kind of, products of their environment, where some of their ideas are a little bit messed up. Other people are very much about survival and about community and about making sure that everybody is okay and thriving to the best of their ability. And they genuinely fear what's going on and what's gonna happen. And all of that comes together to just tell one hell of a story. I mean, you really feel, in my opinion at least, you really start to see those hardships and the effects that they have on people, as well as those little shreds of hope that come along at certain points in the plot. And you really see how much those people hang on to it, no matter how small and fleeting it might be. You know, they're in a position where the world's gone to hell, everything around them is going to crap, people are dying, you know, they just want to stay alive long enough to see a better tomorrow. And you really get a sense of that from every character in this game. Like I said, it just comes down to personality and kind of the path that they take, whether it be a good or a not so good path. But it really leads you to have to make some difficult decisions. And I mean, any game, I always say that any game that can pull me in and make me not only care about those decisions, but make me feel about that, make me feel those decisions, make me a part of those decisions, they automatically get a green light from me. I know my mom feels the same because she, you know, went into the game not really knowing what to expect other than hearing the negative things that I had to say for the first few hours, and we both walked away pretty amazed and excited for the sequel. Something, a side note, something that I really liked about the zombies, that I don't really recall seeing before, or at least too many times in recent memory. These zombie things aren't your traditional, like, slow, brain-eating Resident Evil enemies, like, oh, I hope they don't eat me, like, I hope we survive type creatures. The game actually treats them like they're wildlife in a way. It's like they have their own ways of interacting with each other. They have their own habits, their own groups and hordes and things like that. They have their own ways that they impact the environment, and it just kind of seems like it places them not only as kind of like a plague, a scourge upon the world, but it's like, okay, they're here now, so we need to live with them. They're, you know, we're here on the food chain, they're here, and there's tons of different types that all do different things, that all interact differently. And I really appreciated that. I grew, originally, I thought it was stupid, but I really grew to appreciate how that was handled, and I was like, wow, they're really treating them like wildlife, like they belong here. And in a weird way, you kind of, I guess maybe appreciate them is the wrong terminology to use, but you really see them differently. They're not just mindless monsters. They are intelligent in their own way. They behave just like any animal in the wild would, which I thought was an interesting take, personally, for zombies. But yeah, anyway, number 3 is Days Gone. Number 2 is Resident Evil 2. And you know, I've said a large piece. I gave a lot of my opinions when I did my Resident Evil series ranked video not too long ago, so I'm just gonna kind of spare the larger opinions that I have and just give you the cliff notes. If you're interested to hear what I have to say in full about that game or any other from the series, though, please check out that video. It was a lot of fun to do, and I think there's a lot of good discussion points that we could have together on it, so check that out. What I'm going to say here about the Resident Evil 2 remake, in short, is that, like, not only is it a good Resident Evil game, like a good remake of a installment from a very classic, very influential series, but it's also a very good horror game by itself, you know, with the environments that it has you in, the enemies, the constant feeling of dread, and kind of looking over your shoulder to make sure that something isn't going to eat you, or being unsure of what the next ungodly thing that you're going to run across will be. It all just comes together to create just this immersive horror experience, and one that I certainly can say that I haven't had in quite some time. And it was nice. It was refreshing. I also have to say that this game is the owner of one of the scariest moments for me personally, out of anything, movies, video games, anything. The scariest moment, hands down for me, is when Sherry has to escape Chief Irons in that orphanage. And it's just, I hated that part so much. Never wanted to play it again. Just wanted to get through it. Because it personally felt very, very real to me. I kind of felt this weird connection to it. Like it was, you know, because the entire game you're facing zombies and scientific creations that really aren't all that real, right? You're not, I don't know about you, but I'm not really worried about Tyrant running around or Nemesis or anything like that happening. I mean, 2020's done a lot to us, but I don't think we're quite at Umbrella status yet. So you have the bulk of the game and the bulk of the series is kind of this unrealistic yet scary scenario. But then you have this ever so small chunk where the fear is real. You know, it's the type of situation that kids deal with every day, being abused and tortured and frightened and stuff by people that are supposed to care about them in positions of power. And I don't know, it was a very brief segment, but a very real segment. It hit home for both me and my mom, and we were like, man, it's so wild to think about, but it really was the scariest thing ever, and neither of us want to experience it again. So that's why Resident Evil 2 is number 2, no pun intended. But I know what you're thinking. If Resident Evil 2 isn't your game of the year, like so many other people, what is? The answer is pretty simple. My game of the year for 2019 is a little game called Planet Zoo. Now, again, I think I've talked about this a few times in my time on this channel, but I'm a huge animal lover. And one of my dream jobs has always been to work with animals and be a zookeeper. And on the game side of things, on the game front, one of my favorite series of all time is the original Zoo Tycoon trilogy. I'm talking the OG Zoo Tycoon, Marine Mania, and Dinosaur Digs, of course. Love that game, always have, always will. So knowing that about me, this game's kind of obvious. It's kind of a shoo-in, duh, like of course, contender. I haven't played this game since the beta, primarily because I don't really feel like I deserve to. See, it's one of those games where if you can think it, you can make it. And there are a lot more creative people in this world than me. So I just kind of gave up trying for the time being and just kind of enjoyed watching other people create fantastical, mind-boggling zoos. But if hours and hours of doing that have taught me anything about the game, it's that it's really, really complex. It's not an easy game. It certainly isn't quite as cookie cutter as Jurassic World Evolution was. This game goes in depth with every aspect of the zoo that you build. Everything from customer interaction and fulfilling their needs to caring for the animals themselves, and fulfilling all their demands and stuff like that. And just achieving that balance is crazy difficult sometimes. And I mean, if you can do it, if you can have a successful zoo and have that balance between your customer and your animal happiness and get things running like a well-oiled machine, you earned it. The game's not going to give it to you. You earned it because you understand what it takes to run a perfect zoo from the customer perspective, as far as, what they want as far as educational things to entertainment things to this, to that, to breeding programs, to releasing endangered species into the wild. All of that crazy stuff, conservation stuff, all the stuff that people like to see in real life, to managing very, very difficult, very, very temperamental, and very, very demanding animals. Because if animals ain't happy, nobody's happy, and nobody's going to come to visit your zoo. And it's just so in-depth with the things that they require, the amount of care that they require, the ways that you have to care for them. And it's just that attention to detail on every spectrum of this game that pushed it over the edge for me. Chef's kiss. And if it does anything, it does two things. Number one, gives me hope for Jurassic World Evolution 2. If that's what's coming down the pipe, or whatever comes next with that. I think that as long as the developers learn from what they did wrong with the first Jurassic World Evolution, and they pair that with everything that they did right in Planet Zoo, we're gonna get a good-ass dino game. Alright, and the second thing is, it really makes me want a remaster of the original Zoo Tycoon trilogy. I know it's probably never going to happen. I don't even know who has the rights anymore. Like I said, probably not going to happen, but could you imagine how awesome it would be to see those games, as great as they were, revamped, looking as beautiful as Planet Zoo does. Like, upgrade it with those graphics, maybe tweak it a little bit in terms of creativity and the attention to detail a little bit. I mean, for the time, the original Zoo Tycoons were pretty good, but just tweak it a little bit and just remake it the way that Planet Zoo is. I think we'd have a perfect game. But yeah, enough fanboying over some digital animals. So quick little recap here before I go away and maybe think about going to bed here. Number 5, Mortal Kombat 11. Number 4, Plague Tale: Innocence. Number 3, Days Gone. 2, the Resident Evil 2 remake. And of course, my 2019 Game of the Year, Planet Zoo. Until next time, guys, we'll see you later.